Just press the button.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Is the online versus in-person networking debate now irrelevant? I know this is something you're all asking yourself. Well, welcome to Adventures in Networking, where myself, Kelly West and James West, the founders of Only Networking, the business network for people who like people, will discuss whether the networking medium has distracted us from the truth about why our networking ultimately fails or succeeds.
Love that. Hi, everyone. So we're going to be speaking to our special guest. We've got the fantastic Lisa Yelland on with us, sales conversion superstar. Not her official job title, but I like it. She's going to be coming on the show to talk about her experiences, about what makes networking work, what makes sales work, etc. If you'd like to appear on the show, please leave a comment. We can bring you up on the screen. We can do all sorts of clever stuff, you know. And if you've got a networking question, please put that in the chat, in the comments as well, because we may answer it live on air. We've been known to base entire shows off the back of questions that might come in. So don't be shy. Please leave us a comment. I just want to talk about those lovely people at Pipedrive. So if you don't know, they sponsor Adventures in Networking. Pipedrive, the sales first customer relationship management platform. It is designed to support the growth of small businesses. We'll be telling you a little bit more about Pipedrive CRM, how they help small businesses later in the show. We've also got an exclusive code. You can get 20% off of annual and monthly plans. It should be appearing in the chat in a moment, and you can also get a free 14-day trial. So if you need a CRM system to connect your social media, your sales activity, your networking, can highly recommend that you give Pipedrive a look. So thanks for supporting the show, guys. So let's go on to our topic. Let's just reiterate this point if you're joining a little bit late. But so specifically, we're talking about this online in-person networking thing. So most of the content we see around this is about which is better, little bit about pros and cons, but it tends to be one works, one doesn't. And we're going to challenge that contention because we think that's misleading. Don't really think it's about the medium. We think it goes a little bit further than that. And really that topic of which one's better, Kelly, we think that's a bit of a red herring, don't we? What's your take on it?
We do. And I think we have the authority to say that because of the position that we sit in. So after doing 10, you said 10 years. I mean, it's probably longer than that, James, if we're being honest. 10 years of in-person networking was our background. And we are in our, well, we'll be coming up to our 6th year of online networking. So I think it's absolutely a red herring to say that the medium is the problem. I would suggest that it's the attitude or the actions that you take while you're doing the networking that's probably the issue, I would personally say. So I guess from our perspective, being people that were online networking personally, and then obviously running an online networking business, if somebody had said to me, oh, in a couple of years' time, you're going to be doing completely online networking, I'd have said, don't be silly. I love this. I love coming out, having a nice meal, sitting in a 5-star venue and seeing all of these wonderful people. But now, if somebody said to me, you'll go back to that, I'd say absolutely not. No, I definitely won't. And I think it's really important for me to stress that it doesn't matter what medium you use. It's how you react to it and how you act in that space. And I'd even go so far as to say, with the hundreds and thousands of networks that are out there, there aren't any bad ones. There aren't, because ultimately they're bringing people together. But it's the behaviour of the people that you meet when you're in those spaces. So, yeah, I definitely think it's a red herring, James.
That's the one point, isn't it, that we would challenge, is when you get those people that say definitively, as if it's an immutable fact, that the only way to build genuine connection is meet people in person. But
definitely.
That may work for you and that may be your preference, but that we know lots of people, don't we, Kelly, that would actually tell you the opposite, that they far prefer building relationships online for various reasons.
Yeah, I'll go into that in a bit more detail in a second, but that's likened to, you know, I prefer to use the phone over email in my communications. Well, I'm sure you do, but I'm sure at some point you do both of them. Otherwise, you wouldn't have an effective business. So I think, yeah, for us, it's the way that we've moved into that space. And we can probably argue that we were catapulted into it a few years earlier than we would have done naturally. So it's taken a little bit of time for it to settle down and for it to work out, but it's not going anywhere. And it's only going to ever get bigger and bigger and bigger. So to not embrace it is really missing a trick. I think the point we're trying to say here is to dismiss it as it doesn't work is really silly. To dismiss it and say that I don't want to do it because it doesn't suit my preference, absolutely fine. And I would absolutely agree with that if that's your standing point. But to tell people it doesn't work is not really fair. And we had a situation, well, we've had a couple of these, haven't we? We've been to a couple of in-person events, supported some of our members and things. And we've met a few people that we'd not met before, and you do the, well, what is it you do, and all of that. And I can remember a good couple of people, one specifically saying, oh, yeah, oh, I've heard of online networking, that doesn't work. And you just go, oh, okay, because I wouldn't have the confidence or the audacity to go, no, and your business is pretty rubbish as well. So I feel like it's not something that needs to be said. I completely agree. If you don't enjoy it, don't do it. Don't do it. I don't necessarily want to spend all day cold calling on the telephone, making cold sales, but I know it works. And I know that the people that do it are really good at doing it. So I'm never going to belittle it. Do you know what I mean? So that's my soapbox bit. But yeah, I think if you are a business owner that can naturally trade across borders, why wouldn't you do it? Why wouldn't you try and make your network bigger than you ever could just by going out and having a nice meal?
Well, we know, our network wouldn't exist. 350 members, 3 US groups. We're still predominantly UK, but we know for a fact all day long, all day, every day, there are instances of people trading across borders. And, the obvious one is someone in Southampton might end up doing business with someone in Brighton. And we might not think that that's that impressive, but from a networking point of view, that is much easier to facilitate than it was via in-person networking, because predominantly you met people from that local area. So, unless you've got an incredibly niche or geographically locked business, i.e. you're a plasterer and you can only travel physically so far, the fact that you're doing business between Southampton and Brighton is actually really significant. But if that doesn't feel impressive enough, it's when you start looking at the fact that we ourselves have done business and vice versa with our members in Newcastle or Scotland. You're not going to meet those. And you're also going to meet fewer people that know people in Scotland through an in-person network. So, and of course, the ultimate example that we've got at the moment is when we're doing business with people in the United States, between the UK and the United States. Right. Yeah. So you're basically saying, oh, that's not really happening if my belief is you can only build meaningful relationships if you meet people in person. You're basically saying that stuff's not really happening and I'm turning a blind eye to it. That's a very different, and that's arrogance. Go on.
I don't want to sound too preachy or negative in that space, but yeah, maybe a little bit arrogant. Rachel's put a comment in the chat, and I'll come to that in a second because there's a really good point around this. Our business partner is in North Carolina, and we've never met him. I've spoken to him loads on Zoom, via WhatsApp, however, but haven't felt the need to meet him. Again, if we go online and we buy something, we make a purchase, do we check where that person is? Do we actually want to have a talk to them before we buy that thing? No, we don't, because we don't care at that point, do we? Because we want that thing. If you're using LinkedIn, you're not meeting those people face to face, and you're seeking opportunities and you're having conversations with them. So this is an extension and a hybrid way of doing that. So you've got your LinkedIn and your networking, whether that be online or in person, and you're stitching the two together. But want to bring Rachel's point in, and hello, Rachel.
Before I'll flash that on the screen. I'll just make a point, because this will point us where we're going next when we then bring Lisa on. One of our members, Isis Fabian, who's out in the States, she's a coach, and she talked about the fact this will give you a clue about what you might be doing wrong if you believe you can only build relationships in person. Isis said she worked through lockdown with a team of people and they collaborated beautifully. And she said when we met in person, she said it made no difference. She said, because I built the relationship with them and it didn't affect the relationship one way or the other. And the reason for that is that they were committed to actually collaborating, listening to each other, rather than just, oh, I'm going to an event and I'm speaking and I'm wondering why I'm not getting that two-way interaction. I think that gives you a nice little clue, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Again, because I would imagine Isis is somebody, well, we've not met her, have we? She's in New York, but Isis is going to be exactly the same in person as she is online. Most people that really love online networking are exactly the same as they are online as in person. I'm going to make a statement here that I might regret in a minute. I would imagine if you are an avid in-person networker and you're not open to the online world, you're probably not going to come across the same online. And that might be why you have a little bit of an issue with it, because that charm and that buzz of the in-person that you bring, you might not bring into the online space because you don't yourself value it. Therefore, you're not giving it your all. And that might be one of those things where if you change that behavior, you would start to see a bit of a different outcome from it. But, you know, that is a bit of a broad statement.
Right. Talk about Rachel's and then we'll bring Lisa on. Yeah,
well, really interesting, because Rachel, part of Res 2000, they put on their event findings company. So massively in the in-person world, but the online networking for Rachel has saved her a lot of time and money and effort. So again, you know, she's very much in the in-world industry. We're in the in-world industry as well, aren't we? In-person industry, you know, with event spaces, needing to bring teams together, with finding event venues and all of that good stuff. But she can still meet those people online and save a lot of time and effort as well. Thank you, Rachel.
In-world. I like in-world. That's a weird expression. Right. Yeah. I think that's enough from us. Let's bring a person that actually knows what they're talking about. Let's bring Lisa in. Hi, Lisa. Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Good to see you here. Fresh from Sports Day, we understand.
Yeah.
Fresh and raring to go. Right. So, Lisa, if you don't know Lisa, you've been missing out. Sales extraordinaire. She's got a really interesting approach to sales around energy and stuff. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But there's a particular reason, apart from the fact that she's brilliant, that we've got Lisa on the show, because I was putting together the idea for this show, and then I saw a post from Lisa, and it just connected wonderfully. I'm just going to paraphrase said post. So she talked about the fact that sales conversion, we know this, and I mean, this is a B&I phrase, we buy from people that we know, like, and trust. So we have to know the person, we have to trust them, and that takes time. And that's about being consistent with our networking. And it's about showing up on social, on networking, because there's a very real and perhaps misunderstood connection between you should parallel your behavior on social as you do on networking. That gives you consistency. And also, and I think this is probably the key word, Lisa, and we'll open it up to you in a moment, it's about stop focusing on engagement numbers and stats and make it more about being present. That's a key word, isn't it? Being present is the key to building relationships and making sales. So tell us about that post and why that message is so important to you.
It's key to everything that I do. And actually, when I've been reflecting on my journey, not just my sales consultancy for the last 3 years, but all of my corporate sales experience before then, that's been the key thing. It's being able to be there in the moment, focusing on the other person, not being distracted with other stuff that's going on in your head, and really being intentional about the connection that you're making. And that for me has been this theme that's always run through. And so this is something that I need to shout more about, actually. And it's the theory and the thinking behind cleaning your thinking. When you can clean your thinking in any kind of interaction, it changes it for the better, because as I was just talking about, the distractions have gone, but also it really brings into focus what the point of the conversation or the interaction is, which always should be about the other person. And when you can do that, everything else kind of falls away, because then you feel relaxed. The spotlight isn't on you. It is about genuinely getting curious about that other person. And when you can do that, then making that connection is actually so much more easier. When we're not present, when we're distracted, when we think we need to get something out of an interaction, that's when everything kind of feels a bit off. And you've mentioned a few things that I just wanted to bring into that. You mentioned about being your approach. You were talking about an approach and having a positive approach to networking and any situation that you find yourself doing that in, whether it's online or in person. So your approach is key. What you focus on yourself and stressing about how you're going to come across or what you can get out of the situation. Is it really going to be worth it? You know, what's in it for me? That changes everything, doesn't it? It changes your energy. And you were also talking about being consistent as well, weren't you? So consistency in terms of showing up regularly so that you can build on that relationship, but also the consistency in your energy, your body language, the tone, the pitch, the speed at which you're speaking, as well as what you're actually saying. And when all of those things are aligned, when all of those things are congruent, then it means that you can have that easier connection with somebody, because you haven't got any of this weird energy, you haven't got any of these barriers that are up. And so, I mean, I could talk about all of this all day. What are you thinking about what I've just shared? Is that landing with you? Is that making sense?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. I've got about 1,000 thoughts running through my head, my brain. But we talk about this all the time, and networking doesn't have to be for extroverts. You don't have to be massively bubbly and out there and showing that you're listening and smiling. You don't have to do that, but you do have to show an energy of care and respect, and you have to be present. And you're right, the congruency across everything. So I've got a question for you, Lisa. Do you think then that those behaviours that you're talking about are more important for networking, or do you think it's the medium, the online person? I kind of know the answer to this, but yeah.
Got nothing to do with the medium at all. It's got everything to do with building relationships. And so that has to be at the epicenter of everything you're doing, particularly in business. I was reflecting on situations that I've enjoyed and not enjoyed so much. And actually, there's been two reasons for the changes as to whether it's been a positive experience or not so positive for me. The first reason for me has been my approach to it. So how am I feeling about the situation? What else is going on? You know, if something's going on majorly at home, if I'm feeling a bit off, if I've not cleaned my thinking, you know, if I'm not really present in the moment, that can affect how I'm showing up and my experience of any interaction, whether that's in person, whether that's online, it really doesn't matter. And the other part that I feel is really important is the choice that you have. So if you're choosing to show up and you're going to be at an event, online, in person, doesn't matter, you've made that choice, so make it count. You can make the experience as positive as you want it to be. That's very different to me in my corporate energy, in my corporate space. Many of the things that I went to, I had to go to, whether I saw the value in it or not, however much I tried to see the value in it or not. And I had a very different opinion actually about networking from a corporate perspective than how I found it to be working for myself in my own business. It's almost like night and day. And I think those are the two reasons. Yes, it's down to me and my approach and my attitude, but it's also about choice. And I'm getting to choose to show up. And if I'm showing up, then I'm going to make it count and I'm going to enjoy it.
I'm fascinated with that thought of clean thinking. I'm sure, James, you're there too. I'm like, never heard that before. Oh, yeah. Obviously, maybe in a different guise, but is that easy for you then, Lisa? I'm guessing you're somebody that can strip that out quite quickly.
Well, I'm very practiced at it. So yeah, I would say it is a skill, but really all it means is going back to the presence, being present in the moment, really focusing on the other person, really making sure that any of the noise that's going on has been put to one side. And there's lots of different ways that I do it. There's lots of tools and techniques that I use. And sometimes it's a really quick thing. Sometimes I really have to take my time and plan some time before I'm going to show up for something important. So it could just be simple things like writing a list down of all the noise that's in your head, whether it's what you're going to get for dinner, what you need to do with the kids, who's here, who's there, what else you've got coming up in your day. Even, and this is a really key thing, even thinking about what is going to be the next question that I'm going to ask while someone is still answering the question that you're in the present moment of asking. Even things like that can make a difference, and it can cause that barrier, the energetic kind of conflict, if you like, because then you're not really focused on that person. Your mind's already gone to the next thing. You're not really listening to what they're saying. So there's a few things you could do. Either have a bank of questions that you would like to get through, just as a bit of a prop, even if you don't even look at it, but that can settle yourself a little bit, especially if you find making small talk, as it were, and I just mean connecting, finding that common ground with somebody. Yeah. You can have a bank of questions. That can really help and just smooth the way a little bit if you're feeling a bit nervous about it. Making a list of things that are on your mind that have no place in this conversation or the activity that you're about to embark in. But also for me, energetically, I do a few things. Would you like me to share them with you? This could be a bit off the wall. Yeah, would you like to hear what I do?
Definitely.
Okay. So what I love to do, this is particularly from a sales perspective. So if I have a day of sales calls, whether that's for my own clients or if it's for my Done For You service and working with other coaches and service providers, if I've got back-to-back calls, it's really important that I'm not taking energy from the previous conversation into the next interaction. That's really important. But you could apply this to anything that you do in your day. It doesn't have to be just business activities. It can be anything. When you're making a transition into something else, I've noticed that I enjoy the next interaction so much more if I've taken just a few moments, and it doesn't need to take very long, to really wash away any energy that was from the previous interaction. And I do that physically by washing my hands. So I don't have OCD. I'm not obsessive about cleanliness at all. But for me, symbolically, washing my hands is really helpful. So it makes me get up from my desk. I leave the room. That does something. I'm sure it does. You know, passing out of a doorway, I think that does make a difference symbolically. And then I just ritualistic wash my hands. And what I'm doing is I'm washing away any energy that isn't mine, but then I'm also calling back my energy to me. And that's really important for me as a sales coach, because often the conversations can be quite high energy. Often there's a vulnerability about the conversation. Often people are sharing things with me that they've never shared before. They haven't been asked these questions. And the point of any interaction for me when I'm in that part of my business is to help somebody make an empowered decision. So I really need to hold the space for them to enable them to do that. And if I'm not energetically in the best place, I'm not going to be able to serve them. And that for me is the critical piece. I'm here to serve, I'm here to help, I'm here to open them up to what's possible. And to do that, I need to hold space. So my thinking has to be clear, my energy has to be balanced. And just that simple ritual really works. And then, of course, then once the conversation's concluded, then I'll do the same thing. I'll go and wash my hands and wash away and call back. So that's just one of the things. I've got many other things, Kelly. We could talk about this all day. But
well, I'm waiting to see the Lisa Yelland branded hand soap coming up. You know,
that's an amazing idea. Yeah, love that.
I wonder if that's probably gives us a clue, because a lot of this comes down to, if we're going to review why networking works in one environment and not another, the first thing that you should really be doing logically is look at your behavior and how it differs between those mediums. That's logical to me. So, because ultimately networking is just the coming together of a bunch of business people who have all got motivations to be there. They're all there for pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
If you think about an in-person event, what you've just described happens by default. So that kind of reset, I'm walking from one physical space into another, and I'm going in intentionally to do that thing. Do you think one of the challenges people have online is that they're not stepping out of that environment and they're in a certain mode where that, you know that this is a big problem for most people in business, is that we're sat at our computer and we're jumping between tasks and we find it hard to commit to one thing. Is that one of the challenges with online networking, I wonder?
I think it could be, actually. I think that's a really good point. And that was something that I wanted to bring up about being intentional about how you're showing up. And the key to making any change, I guess, is to notice where you are currently. So if there's any draining of your energy, if you're feeling slightly anxious, if you can feel that tightness in your chest or in your tummy, you know, even for some people, they might start to sweat, or, you know, they might feel quite hot. That's a signal that you're out of alignment. There's going to be then some need for you to almost put on a front and put on a mask. And then when you do that, that's actually going to create the barrier between you and the lovely people that you could be having that really free and easy connection with. So if you raise your awareness as to how you're really feeling before you go to an online networking event, and when you've got that reference point, that benchmark, it's then, well, what could I do to change my energy state? Is it getting up, moving around? Is it stepping outside? Is it putting on some music? How do you want to feel? How do you want to show up? What is the best version of you, and what works for you? It's going to be different for all of us, but many of us don't even think about it. Like you've just said, it's just something, oh, quickly, the reminders come through, let's just jump on. And there's no intentionality about that. And that's when you're going to miss opportunities. Often it's the nuances, isn't it? It's the tiny things that if you're present, if you've cleaned your thinking, you'll pick up on it. But if you're not, if you're in your own head, if you're a bit stressed, if you're rushing, if you are thinking about all the other things that you've got to do, and is this really worth my while? And I don't want to be put with that other person again, it will affect how you come across. So online networking particularly, I think it's great to really be intentional about your transitioning into that and how do you want to show up. The downside to in-person stuff, I'll just mention that when it's in my mind, is that if you're an empath, if you're quite tuned into other people's energy, you can be bombarded with all of the stuff from other people. You don't get that online. I certainly don't find that, certainly not in the same way. I feel like I'm so much more in control of my energy in the online space, which for me as an introvert is a massive plus.
Yes.
I have to be more intentional about protecting my energy when I go to an in-person thing, because I just feel like everything's coming at me. So I guess, as you were saying, it's going to depend on your personality. It's going to depend on how comfortable you are, what your interpersonal skills are, and actually what your intrapersonal skills are. So what is that relationship that's going on with yourself? How aware are you of what's going on for you? Because that's going to be the key driver, I think.
That awareness, isn't it? And Kelly, you've talked about this before, haven't you? So, just to be clear, we were people that were resolutely in-person networkers, and we got all of our business from networking in person. We understood it. We now prefer online, and we can get the same result in less time. What that teaches me is that if you want to adapt and you think about how you need to adapt, you can absolutely do it. And actually, as it turns out, I think in online actually suits my personality, a bit like you, Lisa, that I find it easier to fully give myself to a conversation in a one-to-one on Zoom, because when you do it in person, there's all this background noise. Someone's coming over asking you if you want a coffee. So I think if you're still in that place where you're like, oh, it doesn't really work, I think you need to start by thinking about your behavior. Kelly, can we just bring you in, because you've talked about what Lisa referenced there, that bit about what do you do before the meeting, and do you just smash from one thing into another? Talk about how you kind of give yourself space to then walk into the meeting, come into the online meeting ready, and then what you do after the meeting. I think that would be useful.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some days where I'm screeching around on the last 30 seconds.
Yeah, don't tell us that bit. We don't want that bit. We want the good planned one.
Yeah, I mean, I make sure that I've got half an hour booked in my calendar before. So for meeting prep, I host a lot of them, so I would expect that a host would be there to do that, but not always. But even if I'm going to attend another meeting, I'll always put half an hour in before, because I might have the attendance sheet beforehand. I might know who's going to be there. I might want to look them up on LinkedIn, connect with them, or just see who's going to be in the room. So I've got a bit of an idea who's going to be there, sort of familiarise myself with who the hosts are, a bit about who the meeting organisers are, all of that stuff, because there's nothing worse, is it, to turning up to something and you're going, what is this? Where am I? What am I doing? I do that for a one-to-one as well, in all fairness, because I want to have that pre-work there ready so that I don't make myself look a bit of an idiot when I'm on call. And then again at the end of the meeting, I always book half an hour out just to make sure that I'm having those connections and doing all of that stuff that is the gold, really, because you can't just turn up to any meeting and expect all of that stuff to happen. And I think, James, to your point, you said about us getting a lot of all of our business from in person. We do that now online, but we make it sound easy because we've put a lot of effort in, and we know how to make online networking work for us and how we adapt our energy and everything else that goes with it to make it work for us. I'm going to an in-person event tomorrow. I haven't been to an in-person event, I don't know how long. It's going to be in a hotel with one of our members. She's invited me along, and my sole goal for that meeting is to go and have a nice meal with that member. I have no other expectations. I do not expect to be networking and being here, there and everywhere. I just want to go and have a nice meal with that person. So for me, my attitude towards in-person is completely different. I'm not seeing that as anything other than to go and have a nice social event and a nice meal with the person I'm going.
Let's just, I think there's a really important thing, and you said there, and it's the half an hour after the meeting. My contention, what I suspect people are doing online versus in person, if I go to an in-person event, am I going to run out of the door and get in my car the second that event finishes? Or am I savvy enough to know what's going to work here is that networking bit was the icebreaker. I'm going to now hang around and I'm going to have a couple of conversations, and that's where it's going to start to develop into a relationship. Lisa, do you think that's the bit that people are missing because they're just stopping the call and getting on with their day? If you don't do that follow-up bit, that's probably where you're missing out. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. And if we bring it into sales, because we have to bring sales in, of course, the fortune is in the follow-up. And as you said, Kelly, that's where the gold is actually, because then the shields are down, if there were any up from anybody. You know, everyone can just breathe. You know, I've not got to introduce myself, I've not got to say anything, and it's just a normal human to human interaction then, isn't it? And as you said, most people don't do that bit. So already, if you're one of those people that actually takes the time, it's just those extra few moments, few minutes, that extra part of the conversation doesn't need to be, you know, an extended, you know, half an hour conversation with that one person. But even just I was reading something the other day, which was quite interesting, even just with small things like making eye contact with somebody for 1 second longer than perhaps you might have done, can make all the difference to make them feel like you're really focused on them. And I don't mean in a stalker, weird, starey way. I just mean really just being intentional about you being present in the moment with somebody, and just these small things. So yeah, staying behind, having a chat with somebody as they walk to their car, you know, and say hanging around the loos, but I don't mean that, you know, but even I've had really great conversations, you know, washing my hands again in the loos, and it just feels really natural, and it's not a thing, but actually that has meant something. So yeah, I agree. I think most people don't do it. Most people certainly don't do it in a sales interaction where you've actually had a conversation about your thing, your solution. The follow-up isn't there, or it's not done in the best way. You know, it's just a very generic thing. And when you can make it personal, whatever you're doing, that's what's really going to land with somebody, isn't it? So yeah, I agree. I don't think most people are doing that bit.
Yeah, and I think there's ways, you know, when online networking came about, there was a big, I missed the coffee chat and I missed the walking to the loo chat, the car park, whatever. But I think you can still do that. You know, for me, I will very often in a meeting privately message somebody to say, oh, it's lovely to meet you. You know, I'd love to have a chat with you. And you can see them read it and smile, and I'll connect with them afterwards, and then I'll arrange that call. If you're not doing little things like that, you're not enhancing the experience. So I think it's just about being mindful that you can do all of that good stuff and you can have those opportune moments, but you've got to put the effort in to be able to do it.
That for me is social media. That's what social media for me is for, not marketing. It's for networking. Like Lisa's a great example. Lisa does one of her lives. I jump on, I put a comment, I end up chatting with a few of her connections. For me, that's the fun bit, because social media, when you're just scrolling, is like, it can be quite depressing. You end up comparing yourself with others. The good bit of social media is when we actually talk to each other. Who knew? Social, one of the, you know, the words in the things in the title, isn't it? But it's true though, isn't it? If we don't have those interactions, we do miss out, don't we? And social media is really useful for that, I think. We need a quick ad break. I know, Kelly, you've got some general sort of networking questions for Lisa, but we'll just do a little ad break. I feel like we should have some mad animation. We don't have one. Let's do an advert. We don't need to, because Pipedrive's great. We've been talking about Pipedrive this month. So if you don't know, it's Sales First CRM. So important for small businesses to have a way to track all of their activity, because otherwise we can spend so long networking, marketing. Do we actually have a sales process? Do we have a way to take that activity and actually funnel it into something worthwhile and make it kind of visual and make us accountable to our sales activity? Social media is very noisy. It gets our attention, we need an equivalent to remind us, hang on, have you followed up with that person that expressed interest? That's why we think CRM is so important, and Pipedrive specifically built for small businesses. So we'd recommend that you take a look at that. As we mentioned earlier, you can trial it. You can also get 20% off of monthly plans. I will put once again in the chat. Kelly, anything to add on Pipedrive? I've kind of done your bit, haven't I?
You sort of done it there, didn't you? Just give it a try. There's a 30-day trial and you can try it for free, and you don't even have to put your card details in, which is fab, because we hate it when that happens.
Oh, look at this. Before the questions, look what Richard's just said. That's smart.
Yeah, really smart. And to be fair, Richard has cracked it, because Richard does use social media to keep on top of his relationship build, to check in with people, to just show that he's there and that he cares and that he's supportive. So I think we might nick that little strap line there, Richard. We will credit him, of course. But,
go for it. Ask Lisa some questions, Kelly.
You have sort of answered some of these, Lisa, but I want to know, what's your first networking memory? You know, for me, mine was the tickly cough, the piece of paper shaking, getting to me, and I can still picture that very vividly. So what was yours? Was it good or was it bad?
It was a bit weird. I was made to dance.
Oh.
Yeah, I wasn't dancing on my own. It was in a group thing, but I just wasn't expecting it. And what was slightly odd about it was that the dancing went on. It was the longest song. I can't tell you what it was, but it just went on and on. And, you know, I felt like I was dad dancing, you know, as a mum. I was all right to start with. And then I thought, right, well, I need to give it a bit more. And then everyone was just running out of steam. And then there were just a few left there. I was just kind of stood there. I thought, this is really strange. Yeah, so it was just a bit weird.
Was it a business network?
Back?
I think that was my first one. It was an in-person one, and wow. It was dancing. Yeah.
Wow, I'm surprised you didn't go back.
I didn't go back to that one.
Wonder why. There we go. So my next question then is, how did you work out how to succeed at networking?
Well, do you know, I don't think that I have worked anything out. I think it's just showing up, being me, helping someone to feel good by having some kind of interaction with me. You mentioned that, didn't you? You know, smile on someone's face. You know, is there something genuinely you can compliment somebody on? Can you make somebody feel good from a sincere perspective? And I think that's really a lovely thing to do. That's a gift, and actually maybe we all could be doing more of that day to day, not just in networking. So I think for me, it comes back to the core of everything that I do, and that's what sales is. It's building strong relationships with people, whether it's a yes now or a no, I'm not quite ready. That actually doesn't matter at all. It's about the relationship and ensuring that that relationship starts off on the right foot and it continues all the way through, whether you get to a point of sale or not, whether it's a decision. That's always the goal for me. So, you know, I don't know whether I've worked anything out. I think for me, it's always been about connection and relationship building, and that's what lights me up. And I think that's just me. That's how things have always been throughout my career as well.
Definitely. The energy you bring is just amazing. I can remember when
How
James
did you
first
work it out, Kelly?
My answer is very similar to Lisa's. I think it's just my personality fits really well with the environment of networking, because I do genuinely love talking to people. I don't have an agenda, and I just want to see where that conversation takes me. I've got many people that I keep in touch with. I probably will never do business with them. They might recommend me to someone at some point, or they'll introduce people to Only. I don't really care. I just enjoy being in their sphere. And that for me is me winning at networking, because if they do need me, they know where I am. But I think, Lisa, we're very similar. I'm just going to say that when James met you, he was like, you have to talk to Lisa, you're going to love her. And you meet people like that, don't you, when you're out and about at networking? It is really refreshing, because it's like, wow, we had a chat. Yes, there will be things we can do for sure in the future, but right at that moment, no. But that doesn't mean that we're not going to have a conversation, because you're a really lovely person. So why wouldn't you want to be in that space? You know. So I think it's a bit of a cop-out answer. But I think for me, for Lisa, it probably just happens quite naturally. Or I would say on the flip side of that, if that doesn't happen naturally, I would just take the pressure off yourself and don't beat yourself up personally for not coming at it from that space, because we're just really lucky. That's our personality, and we're quite bubbly in that way.
Well, I might be able to help there, because I wasn't that person. I had to go about it a different way, and I don't think I actually strategized this, because when I first went to networking, I didn't get anywhere. I didn't really know what I was selling, and what I kind of fell back on as a default response was just to ask loads of questions. I just stopped talking about me, and I just thought, I'm just going to talk to these people about their business. Subconsciously, you know, I was a journalist, so maybe it put me in a comfort zone. Maybe I am interested in people, by the way. Maybe I thought I could learn a bit about what they're doing that I'm not. But I tell you what, it worked. People love talking about themselves. And of course, what they did then, without me really realizing this would happen, they told me what I needed to sell, because they told me all their problems, which is gold. You know, what I've learned from networking over the years is that people keep saying the same thing and expect that suddenly someone's going to go, I'm desperate to buy that thing. Whereas what you should be using networking for is to learn about supply and demand and what messaging lands or doesn't land. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Where else can you go with a bunch of professionals that can give you open and honest advice? I mean, you're right, aren't you? You're right to do it that way. I think we sort of touched base on this, didn't we? You don't have to be massively outgoing and, you know, all the rest of it. You don't, because people will warm to you because you listen to them. We talk about this in the office all the time. The amount of people we talk to, and they don't ask you a question. They just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk, and you found out loads about them, and you've probably had a lovely time, and you come off the call and you think, I bet they don't know anything about me. And I've kind of got to the point, and again, we were talking about this with Kearney, good, because I know loads about them, and I'm best placed to introduce them to people when I can and when I see fit. And if they've had a lovely conversation, they'll be fantastic. They'll remember me for that. So why am I getting myself het up about the fact that they've not asked me a few questions?
I'm sorry, I can't sort that view. Whatever I do, it blocks our faces, but that needs sharing. Yeah.
I need time to read it. Go on, James, talk about that.
No, he's just saying, I think if you go to networking, I'm reading from what Richard's saying, is that if you go with that kind of, I've got to get a result from it, it's going to, I mean, Lisa talking about energy, you're going to come in with a very kind of hectic, pressured energy, and people will feel that. Whereas if you go, I'm here to learn, meet some good people, see who I can help, I think that's an underrated thing. Because if you help people, they are far more likely to want to help you in the future. So I think
well,
really
and to touch base on that, because lots of people that say networking doesn't work with them will often say, I've met some wonderful people, you know, my network is growing fantastically well, but I'm just not getting any business. And my thought to that is, but the point is to meet some lovely people. The point is to have those ambassadors behind you that like you, that want to champion you in your business. And that other stuff does quite often take years, can take years to actually get financial gain from networking, depending on what you do. So I think if you're somebody that's in a network, whether that's only wherever you go, it's irrelevant. If you're liked and if you're having really good conversations, you're 50% of the way there. You really are.
Yeah, just on that, actually, we know, don't we, statistically, scientifically, or, you know, whoever's measured this, but a recommendation has more clout, doesn't it? Somebody being an advocate for you is going to carry so much more weight than sometimes you pitching yourself. So there's huge value, isn't there? And this is exactly what we're talking about, but there's so much value in your network. And as you said, these ambassadors that do know you, do like you, can trust you, can then very happily say, oh, you know, you need someone for this. I know this person, you know, they're great. I'll put you in touch. It carries so much more weight.
It does. And that's quite often a decision made on a personality match, other than, because I have introduced thousands of people that I've not personally worked with. I know them, and I know that they've got really good integrity. They're lovely people, and therefore I'm happy to pass them on. So yeah, it's a really good point. That was all my questions, really.
Yeah, I was going to say we need to start wrapping up. So because, you know, I'm in no way an over preparer, but as we get into conclusion mode, so let's go back to our original question: is the in-person online debate irrelevant? I've got a couple of things that you shouldn't do I've got a little list of things that you shouldn't do if you want to get results from networking, and I've also got a short list of what you should do. Lisa, Kelly, if you've got anything to feed into this, just indulge me and let me read this out, just because I've over-prepared as normal. So what people are doing wrong, and this is irrespective of what format of networking. If networking is not working, don't matter if it's online or in person, this is what I suspect you're doing wrong, or you might want to look at. You don't have a clear, concise marketing message. Thanks, Brian Hilliard, line straight from your playbook. Expecting to take without giving. That's a common one. Not listening, so waiting for your chance to speak. And I think online that manifests of as soon as someone else starts speaking, you start writing an email. In person, when they start speaking, you're looking over their shoulder for the next person to speak to. Forgetting that networking is a way to validate you as a person. So how do you behave in a professional setting, and would I refer you on that basis? So again, that's about listening, asking questions, trying to help others, rather than I'm going to be all animated when I'm doing my pitch and then I'm going to be over here looking miserable. Not having a sales process. You'll like this one, Lisa. Thinking that you can sell more by just doing more, or thinking that you can sell just by doing more or better marketing. You're not getting off the hook there. If you've got no sales process and if you don't follow up, you're not going to make sales. And then thinking that the volume of networking that you do and the number of connections that you have is going to mask your other failings. It's about quantity, it's about quality, not quantity. So that's what I think people are typically getting wrong, and this is what you maybe should do. Be clear and concise in your messaging. I'd also add experiment with different messages to find out what lands. Make it easier for people to help you. So signpost what you want and share links. The amount of times we see people at networking go, if you're interested, get in touch. Especially online, you don't need that. You can make that really easy by putting a link in the chat. Help others. So, you know, you can help other people by supporting their social media, smiling, listening, asking questions, connecting them with people you don't have to buy from them, listening. Going back, we've talked about this a lot. So show people that you care, and then be consistent. And that also means do what you say you're going to do. So if you say you're going to book a one-to-one, book it. If you say you're going to connect someone, do it, and be a champion of the people in your network. Great way to get attention is by going where people's attention are, i.e. which is their own content. So, you know, be on that and they'll pay more attention to you. That's me done. Any other thoughts from you two?
I think you've covered loads there. My highlight there was thinking about the volume. It's the same as in social media world, isn't it? We think the numbers are a good thing, and they're not necessarily. So if you're just jumping in and out of networking meetings all day, every day, you're really probably not doing yourself any favours, because that behaviour is not going to land very well, and then you're going to be spread very thin. So yeah, I think the consistency for me is the key in that one. What about you, Lisa?
I loved all of them. I think for me, what comes across loud and clear is, well, there's two things. Firstly, the depth of the relationship as well. So not spreading yourself too thin, like you were saying, Kelly, and really making the effort to follow up with people and continue that conversation. And then the other part, I suppose, would be, if you think about it, because I'm sales, so I keep bringing this in, but the pre-bit about the networking, the event itself, do your prep. Is there anyone that you would love to connect to? And if you don't get a chance to speak to them in that session, then it's a great opportunity after to say, oh, we didn't get to speak, you know, could we book in a one-to-one, because you think, oh, I would really love to connect with that person. So perhaps, yeah, some prep before and being intentional, and then showing up, you know, with that congruence that we've talked about. You're engaged, you're present, you've cleaned your thinking, you know, you're going to have a positive approach and attitude towards this situation, and then the follow-up bit. So yeah, it's a lovely sales process, if you like. The prep, being present in the moment, and then making sure you're following up after.
Yeah,
fantastic. We've got a slightly weird analogy from Richard.
No,
He's getting a bit carried away here. I don't get that at all. Do I think of quality, because it says quality? I don't think Quality Street necessarily has quality.
But that's not what he's saying. No, he's thinking quality. Well, yes, quality street. It's the quality of the. I like it, Richard. I think it's pretty.
It's
Richard,
chocolate. It's chocolate, so that's a winner for me. Yeah, especially the triangle ones. I like the.
Oh yeah, they're my favourite too. There you go. That will spark a debate. What's your favourite quality street?
There we go. Okay, I think the final thing that I would like to say, and final thoughts from both of you, but if one type of networking, and it's probably going to be in person, is the one that works, and online doesn't, I would just ask you to check your behavior, and is it the same depending on which place you're at? Because I can almost guarantee you behave very differently in person compared to online. If you could take some of that and bring it into the online world, and then use the tools at your disposal to speed up the process to connect over a wider distance, you can do amazing things with online networking. But it starts with being honest about, am I the same online as I am in person? Any final thoughts from
It's a great way to end it. And I think, yeah, it's the honesty piece. Can I be the same in person as I can online? And if I can't, how much of that could I bring in order to make that work for me?
Yeah, I love that. It's that authenticity piece, isn't it? And that takes courage, actually. It for some people it can feel, actually, even for me, somebody that's in sales and I need to speak to lots of people I've never met before and build relationships really quickly. I found that that's been a journey for me. So for some people it's better just to take it in small little steps, and you don't have to peel away all the layers in one go. And if you take the pressure off and you just come with the approach that I'm just going to be me, I'm just going to be open, I'm going to get curious about somebody else, and then you can just relax, and then you can be more open, and then people are going to be more open with you, and that's going to really help you build that confidence to be yourself more, actually, and to be more authentic without it feeling like it's a push. And then those connections will just feel so easy.
I think that's probably the key word, actually. Be curious what a difference that makes to networking, as opposed to be here to get an outcome. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Kelly, of course, but extra thanks to Lisa for joining us today. So thanks for watching, everyone. This has been Adventures in Networking. We'll see you again next month.